Are there any celebrity deaths that you just find way more suspicious than what we know on the surface? For me, there's honestly so many different celebrities that have passed away in either mysterious circumstances or sometimes just normal ones, but still are just so strange and have so many different conspiracy theories surrounding them. Today, I want to talk about the connection between three people who I think have really suspicious deaths in Hollywood: Brittany Murphy, Whitney Houston, and Kim Porter. And all three of these people are connected in very strange ways to P. Diddy, but we're gonna totally get into that. We're gonna start with each of the women, why their death was suspicious or what was strange, the P. Diddy connection of it all, and how they all kind of connect to each other. I remember finding out that these three women are strangely connected in a lot of ways after the whole P. Diddy trial of it all started happening, and I started researching P. Diddy and how P. Diddy really came to be and why he is the way that he is. And his real mentor in life was a man named Clive Davis. And Clive Davis basically found Whitney Houston. He discovered her and made her into the pop star she was. And of course, Kim Porter is obviously P. Diddy's ex and the mother of his children, so that's where the connection is there. We're gonna get into all of it though. But before we get into it, I want to thank Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. I've worked with Scentbird a lot. I absolutely love them. If you don't know about me, I love perfumes. I also love switching it up, which Scentbird is perfect for that because you're not committing to a full-size bottle. You get these travel-size perfume bottles so you can really test out whether or not you love the fragrance before you want to commit to buying the full size. So you basically get a 30-day supply of each fragrance, and it comes with these little travel cases as well. They pretty much have every perfume you could think of. I also love that you could take Scentbird's little quiz and they will match you with perfumes. So if you really know nothing about fragrance going into it, you will find scents that are perfect for you and what you already know you like. This one is the Cirque du Soleil. This one has notes of red apple, cotton candy, iris petal, and vanilla bean. I'm so excited to smell this. I love a sweet, sweet scent. That cotton candy note is really strong, but in a more grown-up way, if that makes sense. I feel like we all wore cotton candy perfume when we were in 5th grade. There's a vanilla musk to this perfume that just is so beautiful. The other one I got is Jus Super Fusion. This one has sugared almond notes and white musk, which I love almond scented things. I love anything like that, nutty, pistachio, etc. This honestly smells like a sweeter version of Angel by Mugler. I love that I could just test the wearability and how I like it and how it smells on my specific skin. If you're interested in trying Scentbird, you can scan this QR code or you can use the link below. And with my coupon code Platti55 off, you can get 55% off Scentbird, plus you'll get free delivery to your door. So you're basically getting the product for half the price, and that's just $8. So definitely go check Scentbird out. And without further ado, let's get into the conspiracy theories. We're going to start chronologically how they connect to each other, and we're going to start with Brittany Murphy. So Brittany Murphy was a working actor from her early teens. She had an unmistakable spark. I always say this about Brittany Murphy. There was just such an energy and presence that she had that was so palpable. She was just so sunshine. I don't know how to explain it. There was just such a charismatic energy around her. You could tell that she was going to be a star. But sadly, on December 20th of 2009, Brittany Murphy passed away at the age of 32 years old. She collapsed at her home in the Hollywood Hills that she shared with her husband, Simon Monjack, and her mother, Sharon. Her death at first, it didn't cause that many conspiracy theories because the coroner ended up saying that Brittany Murphy's death was due to pneumonia. This confused a lot of people for sure because a 32-year-old otherwise healthy girl dying of pneumonia is obviously strange, but things didn't really start to pick up on the conspiracy lane of it all until a few months later when her husband, Simon Monjack, also passed away of the same thing. And it's just so strange that two people living under the same roof who are in their 30s and 40s and otherwise healthy died of pneumonia within 5 months of each other. Obviously that raised a lot of questions. So when Brittany passed away, there were quite a few questions about what could have happened before the coroner's report came out, because the last few months of Brittany's life, a lot of people recalled her looking very frail, and other people that she was working with on different sets were claiming that her husband, Simon Monjack, was just unusually involved in the day-to-day decisions that normally wouldn't be a spouse's domain. So, he had control over, who could contact her, who could be in the room with her, and just basically how things ran in their marriage, but specifically in her work life, which was obviously just odd. Brittany was also sick with the flu weeks leading up to her death, and a lot of people believed that contributed, but again, once Simon passed away, the questions were just reopened. So again, on the morning of December 20th, 2009, 2009, emergency services were called to Brittany Murphy's Hollywood Hills home after her mother Sharon found her collapsed in the bathroom. Unfortunately, of course, she was pronounced dead, and in the chaos that followed, there was a lot of speculation. Could her death be due to drugs, anorexia, poisoning, a haunted house, mold in the walls? There was a lot of different theories here. So when the Los Angeles County coroner released Brittany Murphy's cause of death, the primary cause was pneumonia, and contributing factors included iron deficiency, anemia, and multiple drug intoxication, meaning that there were a mix of prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs in her system. She didn't have any illegal drugs in her system. She wasn't ODing. There was nothing of the sort here. She was specifically taking medications for pain, cough, sleep, and then her anti-anxiety medications that were prescribed to her. And the coroner emphasized that there were no illegal narcotics involved in her death. Obviously, she was taking this cold medicine because she had the flu at the time, and the coroner kind of just ruled it as a combination of all of those things. The pneumonia, the over-the-counter medication, the prescribed medication that she was on, and her anemia, which I can't even imagine that being an answer that somebody gets for why their child died, because that's such a frustrating answer for someone who was otherwise healthy, and I don't know. And no one really believed that this was the case. A lot of people had speculations about what could have happened, because again, pneumonia killing someone who is so young is obviously like not that common. I mean, it happens, but not that often to the point where this definitely made a lot of people wonder what was happening here. Honestly, I think the story would have ended here if that's all that happened. I think people would have eventually believed the fact that she could have just died of pneumonia. It was a terrible freak accident and freak situation where she was sick, and just a combination of being dehydrated, exhausted, and anemic. All of those things is what ended up leading to her death. However, just 5 months later, in May of 2010, Simon Monjack, Brittany Murphy's husband, died in the same house of the same causes: acute pneumonia and severe anemia. And that is when shit just hit the fan in the public eye. People immediately thought this was strange. So prior to Simon's death, there were definitely some questions, because Simon and Brittany's mother, Sharon, did like a very weird interview and photo shoot where they were like looking like a couple. It was very, very strange. And I think a lot of people at that point in time thought that Simon and Brittany's mother had conspired to kill her to take over her estate, and perhaps allegedly they were having an affair. Both denied these rumors, but they were just eerily close and strange, and it was just weird. But once Simon passed away as well, no one knew where to point fingers anymore, and this just left the media confused. So first, a lot of people assumed that there was possibly mold intoxication involved here, because obviously they were living in the same house. But the assistant chief coroner at the time, Ed Winter, who we'll talk about later, addressed this directly and repeatedly said that the autopsies and the toxicology reports did not support mold as a cause of death in Brittany or Simon's case. Also, not for nothing, but Brittany's mother was obviously older, and her living at the house 24/7 as well and not getting sick, but these two otherwise healthy 30-something-year-olds getting sick and dying is obviously really strange. So Brittany Murphy's father in particular was never accepting of Brittany's cause of death. He led his entire life trying to figure out what happened to his daughter, and I just think that's so devastating. But in 2013, Angelo Bertolotti, Brittany's dad, ended up pursuing independent lab testings that made headlines, because basically this lab testing ended up resulting in them finding trace amounts of certain metals in Brittany's hair samples, which could indicate potentially being poisoned. So these heavy metals were consistent with that of rat poisoning, pesticides. However, the only thing that's kind of iffy here is that hair samples are kind of hard to really be accurate, and those toxic heavy metals could have come from hair bleach or honestly anything. Hair can be easily contaminated with things from its environment, so it's not really that much proof that she was actually poisoned. And especially when you look at the actual forensic toxicology report, which is what was in her blood and her organs at the time of her death, the autopsy didn't show any signs of actually being poisoned. But that doesn't mean that the coroners weren't lying about something or something shady happening, because Ed Winter, who was the coroner who did Brittany Murphy's autopsy, also conducted the autopsies of Kim Porter and Whitney Houston, which we'll wrap back around later. So if you believe the conspiracy theory that Brittany Murphy was murdered, a lot of people have questions as to who would have done this. So for one, of course, Simon was obviously a potential suspect here. I feel like that's the first place people go, is to the husband, but when he died as well, it was all just very confusing. happening. Then fingers were pointed at Brittany's mom, Sharon, because she was the one who inherited Brittany's entire estate. But something that I find to be interesting is the connection of Julia Davis. So Julia Davis is a former federal officer who worked on border security, and she became a whistleblower after reporting that she found that there were serious lapses in the border vetting on a specific date in 2004. And Julia Davis was a friend of Brittany Murphy, and when Julia Davis came forward saying like, hey, this is like, national security issue happening, and tried to whistleblow it and talk about it, the government, instead of thanking her and being happy that she found this like blip, it was clear that the government had created said blip, if you know what I mean. So basically the next years of Julia Davis's life was riddled with investigations, raids, surveillance, and honestly she was struggling. And Brittany Murphy publicly defended her friend Julia Davis, saying that she didn't think that she did anything wrong. And after that happened, Brittany and her husband started to claim that they believed that they were under surveillance. They both had experienced harassment because of Davis's whistleblowing. Brittany felt like she was being followed. Even Simon as well felt like he was being followed. They didn't want to stay at the house that they lived at. She would stay for months at the Beverly Hills Hotel, even though she had a beautiful home right on top of the Hollywood Hills. And overall, Simon and Brittany just both reported feeling like they were being watched. And obviously, that's suspicious when later they both turn up dead. Also, not for nothing, but in 2007, Simon Monjack, he's British, was having immigration trouble, and he was detained overstay, basically. And a lot of people think that this also put Brittany and Simon on the government's radar, and a lot of people think that the government had something to do with their death. I don't know. All I'll say is it just kind of sounds very like Marilyn Monroe and Michael Jackson. There's a lot of people who claim that they felt like they were being watched weeks and months prior before their death. It's just weird that Brittany Murphy had this like internal government connection, that clearly something here was off, whether it was just surveillance or whether they were responsible for her death allegedly. Something here just isn't quite right. We're going to talk about how they all connect at the end, but now we're moving into Whitney Houston. So Whitney Houston obviously is one of the biggest artists of all time. She's obviously an icon. I think that there's a lot of controversy surrounding her death, not necessarily because her death was unexpected because she was young, but also she had been struggling. Like, I don't really think her death itself is necessarily a part of a conspiracy. Like, I kind of think it could have just happened naturally the way that it did. I don't necessarily not believe the coroner's report on it, but I will say that there are some suspicious things that happened surrounding it. So there was some weirdness in the weeks leading up to Whitney's death. So she was in Los Angeles. It was Grammys week in February of 2012, and Whitney Houston checked into the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Basically, what's interesting about this particular situation all points to Clive Davis. So Clive Davis is probably someone you've barely ever heard of, maybe never. And honestly, that's who I think the Illuminati is. Like, not him specifically, but I've always said that I feel like the elite, the Illuminati, if that exists, that it's less so the celebrities and actually more the producers, the executives, and all of those people who are running the show behind the scenes. So Clive Davis is one of those people. So he pretty much found Whitney Houston and completely boosted her into stardom. And she was with him from the beginning to the end. So they had been working together since the 1980s, and they just really put that into perspective here. So now Grammys week is happening. Clive Davis throws a pre-Grammy party every single year at the Beverly Hills Hotel. But then of course on Saturday, February 11, 2012, that night was supposed to be the pre-Grammys party. But that day at around 3:55 p.m., Whitney Houston was found dead in her hotel bathtub. So to me, what should have happened here is Clive Davis, someone who's been working with Whitney Houston from the day that she stepped out on the scene. He really built up her career, helped her become a literal icon. And also, I'm sure he's close with her. He's known her for like 30 years at this point. Theoretically, they're close. Even if they weren't, I think it would have been the most appropriate thing to do would be to cancel the Grammys party. Obviously, that just didn't happen. That's not what Clive Davis decided to do. Instead, he decided, let's continue the party and call it a tribute, which is so fucking bizarre because Whitney Houston wasn't even removed from the Beverly Hilton Hotel until midnight that night. And that means that just downstairs from her hotel room where she was literally dead said they were partying. And I just think that's so fucking bizarre. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care that they claim like, oh, it's what Whitney would have wanted. The show must go on. Like all this shit. No, that is fucking bizarre. Not even is it just a party, but having the party at the place where her body is being examined by coroners, and like it just is so bonkers to me that this still continued, honestly. Obviously, a lot of people in the industry really found this decision to continue this Grammy party disrespectful. I mean, it's pretty grotesque if you think about it. To hold a gala in the same building while her body lays upstairs is just so disturbing, and I can't imagine anyone thinking that that would be what someone would want. I just think him continuing the party is obviously incredibly dark, and then once you connect it and realize how connected he is to P. Diddy, it's just mind-boggling that not more people are talking about this. If we're gonna go into Clive Davis and Diddy, it's kind of the idea that powerful men just like loom behind the darkest outcomes. And not even that they are necessarily responsible for the deaths that happened, allegedly, but a lot of people think that they are either involved in some way or just think that their actions after or before were just inhumane. Like, I personally think still going on to hold a Grammys party at a hotel where your client passed away hours ago, like her body is still there, is bizarre. So obviously once Whitney's autopsy came out, it was that she died of heart disease, and it was determined that recent cocaine use was a contributing factor. Pretty much drugs were blamed for this. And again, I don't think that that's not true, if that makes sense, but a lot of people think where she got the drugs, and some of that could have included some foul play. And I will just say that I just think it's obscene that Clive Davis continued to have this Grammys party. Like, I think that speaks so many volumes that I don't understand how people are not talking about that literally all the time. But I want to add context here, because how is this connecting back to P. Diddy? So Clive Davis basically did the same thing that he did with Whitney Houston with P. Diddy. So Sean Combs and Clive Davis started a joint venture in the 1990s when they built Bad Boy Records, which of course helped launch Diddy's career. There's a lot of speculation about Clive Davis that he's like worse than Diddy, that he's a scumbag, that he's involved with the same type of nefarious things. And they basically claim that Diddy learned everything that he knew from Clive. I don't know if that's true, but I will say the kind of person that we're seeing here is not good. To throw a whole ass party in the same hotel the day your biggest client dies, I literally can't think of anything more disrespectful, genuinely. And then we're going to end the video by talking about Kim Porter, who is definitely, of course, the most prominent and obvious connection to Diddy. So Kim Porter was the mother of P. Diddy's children, and she passed away on November 15th of 2018 in Los Angeles. And guess who did her autopsy yet again? Ed Winter. And guess what the cause of death was? Pneumonia. Another young person who's otherwise healthy just dying of pneumonia, and also happens to be surrounded in no P. Diddy. Don't like that. So at the time when this happened, a lot of people pointed fingers towards Diddy, but it really wasn't that much of a theory because we didn't know what we know now. And since 2024 happened and the P. Diddy trial and everything about the freak-offs have came out, a lot of people are pointing fingers. So a lot of people believe that Kim Porter had access to different P. Diddy freak-off files and was planning to expose the truth about Diddy, and that is why she passed away, because she was taken out so that she wouldn't be a problem anymore and wouldn't expose anything that people in the industry didn't want to be exposed. Because it's not just P. Diddy here who's involved. Obviously, there's a string of people, and clearly they are very powerful because, again, P. Diddy basically is getting off scot-free. So after Kim Porter passed away, her home, which was owned by P. Diddy, was burglarized, and the only thing that was taken from her home was her laptop, which many people believe to have had evidence of P. Diddy's freak-offs. And I don't know, I just feel like nothing else makes more sense than that. Like, not gonna lie, obviously. I just feel like you're breaking into a huge house in Toluca Lake that has a bunch of expensive things inside of it and you only take a laptop. It's obviously weird. So then comes the Kim Porter memoir. So in late 2024, a book marketed as Kim Porter's memoir appeared online and basically rocketed up sales charts. Like, lots of people were reading this, although I will say Kim and Diddy's children have publicly denounced it as fake, but like, also, I don't know, like they were defending their dad a lot, so it's like not that surprising. But either way, I think if you like have two parents and one of them dies, I think the last thing you would want to believe is that the other person was involved. So I don't know. But basically it's theorized that this manuscript kind of came out after the P. Diddy information was coming out, the trial was happening. A lot of people think Kimora Lee Simmons is the person who released this memoir that Kim had been writing. Again, none of this is like technically verified, but allegedly in the memoir, she said that she was scared. She said that she had proof of P. Diddy doing terrible things to Justin Bieber, to Usher, and she had proof of everything, and there were files and videos, and she was scared for her life. But again, none of this is quite verifiable, and a lot of her family members have said that this wasn't true. But the main person who people believe released this information, Kimora Lee Simmons, hasn't broken any silence on this, so I don't know. Since researching P. Diddy, I've always thought that his connection to Kim Porter's death was definitely there, and also definitely ignored by the LAPD, the government, whatever you want to call it, Illuminati, I don't know. It was ignored. So now how are all of these women connected to Diddy? So of course, Diddy and Kim had a relationship, they have kids together, but Diddy was also friends with Brittany Murphy, because if you didn't know, Ashton Kutcher and Brittany Murphy dated, and if you didn't know, again, Ashton Kutcher and P. Diddy were very close friends, like closer than I had ever known until I like researched this. I don't know, wasn't paying attention to what the fuck P. Diddy was doing. But him and Ashton Kutcher were really good friends, which is obviously insane when you think about the fact that Ashton Kutcher literally ran an entire company called Thorn that was supposed to be catching people like P. Diddy. Like literally trying to protect children and protect people from being trafficked. Like it's kind of insane, and it makes me really freaked out, because if he knew about this and was still friends with him and was still running this company, like it's just as weird as fuck. It's weird. Like was he using it as a distraction to get the heat off of him and make people just automatically assume he's this charitable, helpful guy? That's up for debate. And then of course Whitney Houston is connected through Clive Davis himself. Clive Davis basically boosted the careers of both Whitney Houston and P. Diddy, obviously at different times, but it seemed like both of them were really mentored by Clive Davis, and that's how they all connect. All three of these autopsies were also conducted by Chief Coroner Ed Winter, and now he's dead. So that's interesting. I honestly just really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because since P. Diddy has been on trial and I've like looked into obviously that, and then led me down the rabbit hole of Kim Porter, which led me to, you know, Clive Davis, Brittany Murphy, all of these like people around P. Diddy that are dying of pneumonia, which is freaking obviously not like super common for people in their 30s and 40s. It just felt like there was something darker here, and you can connect the dots for yourself, but I do think that we're onto something here. I do think there's connection here. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't like it. And like you could probably go even further with Tupac and Biggie's death, because that's a whole other thing. But there are just so many different suspicious celebrity deaths, and I think these three being connected without being actually connected to each other very much, if that makes sense, is dark. It's dark. And the fact that they're all connected to Diddy and Clive, I just think there's something very dark here going on in Hollywood. Anyway, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and if you guys like this type of video, let me know, because there are a ton of celebrities who I find their death to be very suspicious. So let me know if you would like to see that, and let me know of any celebrities that you find their death to be suspicious and you want me to talk about, investigate, and make a video on. But anyway, that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe to new videos every week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.